So obviously that story continues in the new Rad Speed iron. We've got that in variable length and one length. I must admit, as much as I love my new toys and I love the driver, I must admit the two things that really impressed me for this year, the fairway wood was one, but perhaps more so the iron, the aesthetics. And I have to say, I don't think the aesthetics in SZ were poor. In fact, I think that it's progressively got better year on year, but this year it just looks more premium. Looks to be a little bit less offset from certainly to the eye. I don't necessarily know that there is anything measurable different, but and there's a different kind of chamfer to the sole as well, isn't there? So
yeah.
But I think the big story that's probably going to come out with Cobra this year, we've seen a little bit of it with the putter, the limited edition putter with the 3D printing. We've obviously got the 3D printed lattice and the medallion on the back. Can you maybe explain a little bit of the theory behind that and why it's so important?
Yeah, so back in November, we launched a partnership with HP or Hewlett Packard and Parmatech, all around bringing 3D printing to golf. So 3D printing offers for guys in R&D and our technicians unlimited complexity in terms of if normally you've got to try and build something, get something to the right size and shape, it has to be of a certain structure to be strong enough to withhold being hit, being swung, being carried, being shipped, X, Y, Z. By using 3D printing, we have unlimited complexity, and also there's a huge weight saving as well. So by introducing that 3D printed lattice or the medallion to the back of the club, that's going to give us a weight saving. It also gives us the ability to make that positioning on the back of the club as perfect as we like, in that respect.
Right. Okay. That's hopefully something people see a real benefit from.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's just, again, it's a case of that, we feel we lead the market in terms of innovation and making and introducing innovation, and it's not innovation for the sake of it. It's making sure there's a benefit, and the benefit for us is we managed to save some weight from doing it that way. And as every golf manufacturer in the world will tell you, they need to save weight so they can reposition it and move it around. And the iron, that's a key advantage this year. You mentioned a little bit about it looks slightly different versus SC. I think it probably looks a little bit cleaner on the sole.
Yep.
And also we still have our carbon fiber top line. So that was something that was present in our Speed Zone products. This year with Rad Speed, they've been changed. It's now like a black color of the carbon fiber. So it looks a little bit better to look down on, and that still comes in our 4, 5, 6, and 7 iron. And again, that saves us 2 grams of weight, which we can then reposition.
Awesome. I think in terms of the irons, obviously the one iron that we probably haven't mentioned, I know there's a couple potentially later in the year, but the one thing that we haven't really mentioned that's available now and has been since November is the MIM Tour iron.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that an awful lot of people know a huge amount. That I think it's aimed, I suppose, at your better player, but that same player generally looks for something that's feel oriented, I guess. And for the first time, there's a product on the market which is feel oriented but isn't forged. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about the MIM technology and why it works?
Yeah, so the King Tour iron, we launched 2.5 years ago our King MIM wedge. MIM stands for metal injection molded. So it's basically it's the process we go through to create the head itself, if you like. So by introducing that, it gives us more. We can build heads with more precision. So say we launched with the wedge. It was really popular. The feel was great, and it was just a natural progression then to look at introducing that into the iron as well, which we did. So that iron is designed to sort of sit probably just below Forge Tech, if you like. So it's a slightly better player profile versus that Forge Tech iron, and has that MIM process that's been made. And to say, it's impossible to speak for other people with how it feels, but having hit them myself, it's they feel great. It's a really nice, clean looking iron to look down on, and again, it's performed really well.
Excellent.
It's a bit more of a traditional lofts in those irons as well. So I know there's certainly we're seeing a shift in the mood, and I'm sure you are too, in terms of people going to those sort of better player irons, but that are, you know, super low lofted, you know, 7 irons that are around 29-30 degrees. The MIM iron is more traditional in terms of its loft. So in a head-to-head on a distance challenge in the net, it's probably not going to be one that comes out on top. But the player that's aimed at is probably one who wants more sort of precision, feel, workability.
Yeah, I think that's an education thing. We mentioned distance earlier on with the driver, didn't we? That, you know, that's been the huge marketing tool for all the big brands for as long as I've been involved in the industry. And certainly, I think with the MIM and the player that it's targeted at, I think that player recognises that what they're looking for is, as you say, playability. It's been able to control trajectory and things, which is maybe a little bit more complex to do. And you're hitting something that's a 5-iron loft and coming off maybe with inappropriate spin and being able to control it. Wouldn't be the first time we've ordered custom build sets with lofts up, basically, with it. So I'm sure you'll see a bit of that as well.
Yeah, and I think as well that the great thing for the consumer these days is there's, you know, especially in golf as a whole, but there's the ability now to test and see if something is generally better for you. It's not like a pair of running shoes when someone, you know, if you buy these shoes, you're going to run any faster, because there's no, you can't gauge that, you can't measure it. You can go into a fitting and use a launch monitor or have some form of that data, and you can see you can actually see with your own eyes, is it going further, is it going straighter, is it going higher, is it spinning less, is the dispersion better? You can find what you're looking for from a product, and custom fittings become such an important element of that as well. And it probably brings us on a little bit to talking about irons in those rad speed irons where we have the one length offering as well. Which again continues this year. So the technology of those irons, again, like the hybrid, exactly the same technology. The difference being the rad speed 1 length irons are all going to come in at 7 iron length. Again, the weight is added to the longer irons to make sure we hit them the correct distance, and there's weight removed from the shorter irons to make sure they go the right distance. So that's a quick tip. If you've got a set of normal irons at home and you cut them all to the same length, they're not going to work the same. That'd be an expensive mistake. But from the one length concept, to say championed by Bryson, probably gets less attention from him now, given that he's bulked up and is driving every par 4 in sight. But the concept around one length is all about making the game hitting your irons consistently better, hitting it consistently at the middle of the club, making a consistent swing. And it's really something that we still to this day are pushing, that people should go and try it, have a go. Does it work? Does it not work? If it doesn't work, that's great, because we have a variable length set that you can move into. No problem.
I think certainly the feedback we've heard, or the resistance to it, I suppose, is that it's different. It's the same as everything else. You know, it's the number one barrier, that, you know, it's different. It's not what I'm used to. But from a coaching perspective, if we give people a 7 iron to start off with, it's a hell of a lot easier then to say, well, you know, everything stays the same. We don't need to change ball position. We don't need to change width, distance, or swing thoughts, or anything. And I think the fact that Cobra last year allowed people to kind of mix and match a little bit now as well. I know it's something I experimented with my Forge Tech. So basically went 4 to 7 iron and 1 length, and then the shorter irons variable length. But I've seen that, and I don't know whether you've seen it. I see with a lot of senior golfers the opposite being the case. That, you know, again, I'll use my dad as an example, but I see people where flexibility is an issue struggle to hit their wedges because they can't retain posture, but actually fairly decent with a 7 iron or an 8 iron in their hands. Now, if you give them a wedge that's the same length, yes, it takes a bit of getting used to, but actually their ability to make a consistent impact on the ball is vastly improved. I think the thing that puts most people off isn't actually the 4 iron and the 5 iron. It does tend to be the thought of having your short irons, having your sand wedge 2 inches longer than it would have been previously. and that obviously has knock-on effects. I mean, I don't know, I haven't tested it with rad speed. Do you still see the same thing with higher launch with one length irons?
Yeah, I think from a concept point of view, I think it makes complete sense to a majority of people. My 5-iron, my 6-iron, my 7-iron are all the same length. They all go different distances. That makes sense. I'm all in. I think sometimes the concern comes, but if my wedge suddenly is the same length as my 7-iron, is that going to work? Is it going to be weird? Is it going to go too far? So we've made constant improvements with it, and we continue to work closely with Bryson as well in terms of it. Now he's obviously a slightly different beast in terms of his swing plane and his setup. But yeah, the improvements been made. That the lie angles are actually now slightly flatter in the shorter irons and slightly more upright in the longer irons, just to allow that dispersion to come in. And on top of that, naturally you're going to launch the 9-iron higher versus your 9-iron purely because it's longer. You're going to create more loft at impact. But the fitting kit and your fitting kit will come with a 5-iron, a 7-iron, and a 9-iron. And for us, the challenge, or the challenge to you, I guess, is to say to that consumer, bring in your 5-iron, bring in your 9-iron, hit 5 balls with each. Let's see which one works better. The amount of people I've seen over the years who came in thinking, I'll have it in the longer irons, I don't want it in the shorter irons, after hitting 20, 30 shots, said actually, I'm in. So
yeah.
So it's a trial. It's to say it's definitely a trial thing. If people want to go the half and half set like you described, that's something we still offer.
I think the reason that I went with it, I went all in the first year, including the Jumbo Max grips and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bryson Irvine.
Pretty much, yeah. Johnny Walsh at the time delivered them for me, stood in the first tee on a February evening, freezing cold, and I shanked 6 in a row with a 9 off the tee. But again, you know, I think the thing that I found when I changed the grips, aside from the fact that I was going to need a tour bag all the time to carry them because of the thickness of the grips, I think the thing that I found were specific shots. I did struggle with the idea of getting that knockdown shot, but yeah. I have found it easier with the more recent iterations because they obviously have moved the CG and things like that.
Yeah.
On the grip, actually, that's something that no one really massively talks about, but it is something that you guys have learned from Bryson, isn't it? That the vast majority of the grips that Cobra put on the clubs now have a tour taper rather than your standard taper and try and quieten the hands. I'll probably ask you to talk about that because it's quite interesting to me that through start my training, the thing that we were always told is that person that's got a slice or they need a thinner grip because it allows them to make the hands work harder. And Cobra are flipping that on its head and saying, actually, that's not the case. What's the thinking there?
Yeah, we did a lot of research around grip thickness, and I think if you look at any other sport where you hold something and hit something, so baseball, cricket, tennis, think about the grips you use and you hold in those sports. They're all thicker, and they're all thicker than a golf grip is. Now, obviously, the shaft has an effect on that, but we know with like a Jumbo Max, you can still have that bigger, thicker grip. I think back to how you'd measure grip size with what size gloves someone wears or that type of thing, but there's all different things that can come into that. So we introduced thicker grips as standard effectively a couple of years ago, and it wasn't something we massively shouted about and said, oh, by the way, these grips are all thicker. It was something that happened, and generally the feedback, there wasn't any. There was nothing that came on the back of it. Say from the testing we did, it was a lot of people preferred a slightly thicker grip.
Yeah.
That's basically as simple as it was, and it's been introduced and it works well. And obviously, if someone wants something with a thinner grip, we offer that. That's no problem. We are seeing a trend. If you look at putters going back a few years, everyone would use that thin ping Scotty Cameron style grip that Tiger always used, and then all of a sudden everyone was using a 2-thumb or a huge super stroke grip. So with irons and drivers and physical golf clubs, I think they've got thicker. I don't think they're going to go all to Jumbo Max. And to say, certainly don't think anyone listening will go to Jumbo Max in all their clubs after hearing about your experience. But I think certainly something a little bit thicker does help. And I don't know, without getting into the down and dirty with golf swing mechanics, if you're going to slice the golf ball, I don't think a thinner grip's going to suddenly cure that for you. Else, I don't think there'll be many golf pros knocking around.
No. There's many a time I was wished it was that easy.
Absolutely.